Which day two running back makes the most sense for the Dallas Cowboys? All that more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, today we were talking about my favorite position in the world, running backs. How you doing today, sir?
Good. I mean, I honestly want to let you just have the floor so you can just, expound endlessly about your love for the position, about the value at the position, the unique players that you find everywhere that are irreplaceable to their teams.
Sure.
I know this is a position that you love, but having said that, this is a very different year of the draft. You've already mentioned about trading up for running backs, so maybe the glacial ice is melting a little bit here.
I mean, not really, but I do. Day two, I mean, I've been saying this forever. Day two is where you get your running backs, right? That's typically the best value. And go look at a lot of the best running backs in the league. They've been drafted on day two, whether that's Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, Alvin Kamara. I mean, there's just so much value. Dalvin Cook on day two. So let's talk about a couple names that would make sense for the Cowboys. And let's start with Jahmyr Gibbs, who many people view as the number 2 running back in this class from Alabama. What did you see when you turned on the tape?
Yeah, I mean, this guy is a fun watch, to say the least, right? He's a little bit undersized. He's below average height, undersized. He's under 200 pounds. He's definitely built more like a change of pace back and more like that than a guy that you necessarily are going to be making the feature back in your offense. But he is electric with the ball. He's got he's a joystick guy. He's just one of those guys who you can he plays like a video game. He's shifty, he's fast, he's creative. He destroys angles with speed, with creativity. He has very precise and very fast feet. He makes quick decisions. He has the feet to back up those decisions. He tiptoes through trash like a ballerina on speed. It's crazy to watch him getting through all the trash on the ground, and he's just zipping through it very quickly without it. With like I said, very precise feet. He's not touching anybody. He's not getting tripped up. He presses the hole well in zone runs and uses his speed to threaten and force overruns from the second level defenders. Everybody down the field knows he's fast, and he uses that to his advantage. And he presses holes and he forces linebackers to make mistakes. And then once they do, he makes cutbacks and he turns them into big plays. He's a top end receiving threat. Probably more valuable as a receiver than he is as a runner. He can run routes from the backfield and the slot out wide. In a world of 2 deep coverages that we're starting to see now, more of the shell coverage, he will be an absolute weapon as a dump-off option. He's a true game tilter in this sense. I think that this is kind of where you're going to start seeing offenses start to take advantage of these shell defenses that they're seeing, is they'll get elite type players like this guy and have him coming out of the backfield. And then you're suddenly having to put a linebacker, a nickel backer on this guy. And he catches a 2-yard pass and turns it into a 25-yard pass. I mean, that's kind of a lot of what you should expect to see from this guy in the future in the NFL. He's unnaturally talented as a receiver. He cleanly catches the football and transitions to a ball carrier very quickly. He has the instincts to find open space on scramble. Just that was one of the things that I was really impressed by is you see Bryce Young break the pocket, try to get open, especially in the red zone or something like that. And if Gibbs is out en route, he has the kind of natural instincts to just find open spots and zones and sit in them or get clear. He understands how to run the scramble drill, which is kind of unique for a running back who's running routes.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I lost my spot for a second. has the feet to avoid contact behind the line of scrimmage at an exceptional rate. But if he doesn't do it, he usually goes down, and that gets into the one issue I have with this game. Power is practically absent from his game as a runner.
And I think that's the difference between like him and like Tony Pollard. I think Pollard has a little bit more power, not a lot. It's not like he's moving piles, but he has power. Gibbs doesn't. But that doesn't mean he can't be a super successful running back, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And like I said, like he's developed a way to work around it with his feet and his quickness. Yeah, he's like I said, it's practically absence from his game. If he runs into a defensive lineman, he's going to get swallowed up. He's not likely to a guy who's going to be breaking a bunch of arm tackles. I wish he would break more arm tackles in the hole. That's the only area of his game where I wish he needs to, I think he needs to improve. He needs to add some weight to his lower body,
which I think he can do, by the way. We've seen running backs come into the NFL and not be the most powerful. And as he's pretty young, like as he gets to be 22, 23 years old, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him add a little bit more power to his game.
Not likely a guy you're going to be seeing in pass protecting a lot in the NFL. And that is because you want him in route running, but also, it's kind of not a double-edged sword, but it's you're definitely just not going to want to put this guy in pass protection because he's so good as a route runner and because he's so bad as a pass protector that it's just that's what you're going to want to do. So that just kind of comes with the meal. You just need to be aware of that. He doesn't have very much experience there, and he's kind of undersized, and he doesn't necessarily have the willingness or power to kind of hold up there. So throw him out in the route. Don't put him as a pass protector. Like I said, he needs to add good weight to his lower body, develop more pop into his game, just because I think you have to have that element to your game. He is so good as where does he win? I put him God tier receiving back. Like he's so good as a receiving back that you almost have to have the conversation of what is the value of a change of pace running back? Because I don't feel like you're going to end up drafting him in the second round and maybe even the first round, right?
Probably.
And he's not going to be someone that you're going to want to give like all the share of carries in an NFL season. He's not that kind of running back necessarily.
I think you want him to like probably 12-ish carries a game.
Yeah. So there's a value question there that I think is larger than just his, evaluation about exactly how you want to evaluate these types of players. But for this type of player that you don't necessarily want to make I don't want to say feature back, because you definitely want to feature him, but you don't want to like give him the majority of the carries or the touches that you would a running back in a regular NFL game. He's about as good as you're ever going to see. And my unanswered question is, can he function as a team's feature back who received the majority of his touches? I think if he puts on like 10 to 15 pounds in the lower body, I think you feel better about it. But I would still feel like I would want to pair him with, a mid-round, maybe less dynamic, but more balanced running back to
more of a thumper.
Yeah. Just to take on some of the many required touches that you have in an NFL season.
So my thing is, I don't mind that at all. I kind of like the approach, a running back by committee approach, because you can get guys with special skill sets. And I think Gibbs has it. I think he's got like game-changing speed. And he's somebody that you have to be terrified on 3rd and 6. If they dump the ball out to them, he's going to get 14 yards without even having to do much about it. And that has a lot of value. And I struggle to find a comp. Like if you want a low-end comp, I think like Lamar Miller, who was drafted by the Dolphins, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. I think he could be that. But like what I could see him being, and this is, I know this was relatively short-lived, but Javid Best, who the Lions drafted, didn't work out because of concussions, but somebody who is such a dynamic,
so good at that weapon. Spot. Yeah.
And you run the Texas routes or just the sideline stuff where you're just throwing the ball to him in the flats. He is so dynamic. And I do think on this Cowboys offense, they could always use a little bit more speed. I think he's a fantastic fit. I really do.
Yeah, he's a borderline a gadget player in your usage of him, but the conversation that unfortunately we're going to have just around this guy again, which is not about his valuation, is how valuable is that running back spot, and I would argue it's incredibly valuable because he has the most valuable aspects of a running back's game like to a T. He doesn't have the other ancillary spots, the things that are kind of easier to find in a running back, later in the draft. He's not going to be a pass protector.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to be a goal line running back.
Yep.
You don't necessarily want him on 3rd and 1 to be the guy you're giving the ball. Nope. But everything else that he does exceptionally well is the most valuable stuff that a running back can do. So the question becomes like, where do you draft him? Where do you feel comfortable drafting him, knowing that you're going to have to pair him with another running back who is going to have to get maybe more touches than he does just through the course of the NFL season, just because you're paying for the electricity that he produces, the touches that he does have.
2nd round. That's where I feel comfortable drafting that guy. Let's talk about another guy that actually I think would be a really good fit with Jahmyr Gibbs next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything and anything from money lines to point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net, all in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. All right, Landon, let's talk about UCLA running back Zach Charbonnet, who you and I both had some fun watching him. What did you think of his tape?
Man, I really like this kid. I'm a fan. I think that he's not the quite the dynamic player that you see from Gibbs, but I really had a good time watching his tape. He's 6 foot, 214 pounds. He's got 32-inch arms, 4.5, 340 guy, which was a good time for him. I really like that, especially combined with a 1.54 10-yard split.
Yep.
I think that shows you the kind of athlete you're dealing with. I mean, those numbers, he's almost 250 pounds running a 4.5 and a 1.54. He has some explosion to him. And you see that too. He has a 37-inch vertical, a 10-foot plus broad. He has some athleticism to his game. And it's not surprising that he transferred from Michigan, where, they have absolutely ridiculous weight room. So he clearly took advantage of that while he was there. Prototype size and with solid muscle definition in the upper and lower bodies. I mean, he looks the part. He's got kind of thin waist and it's just balloons out into muscle upper and lower body, which is exactly what you want. People forget running backs are often the best athletes on these teams. They have to be physically in incredible shape. And that's what you are often looking for with these guys that have to carry the ball a ton. I mean, he did that and he has that powerful lower body. He's a tackle breaker. He's an upright running style guy, which you don't see a ton of as much anymore. He uses his short area quickness and plus balance, all combined with his lower body power, to make him very hard to tackle by one defender. That was the thing I think that I was the most surprised, kind of diving deeper into his game, was how creative he was and how elusive he was for a 215-pound back. He makes subtle moves at a moment before contact that disrupt the tackler's process. This particular trait reminds me of a very specific running back that I'll talk about at the end of the report. But
all right, come on, you can't just leave us there. Come on, who is it?
I mean, he looks like Emmitt Smith. Like, he looks like Emmitt Smith in the way that Emmitt used to break through, and he was never very fast or exceptionally quick, but he was so good about understanding how a tackler was attacking him and then just making kind of subtle shifts to throw off the angle, to throw off the direct hit. And that's why you didn't never see Emmitt take a ton of kind of direct hits, despite being an upright body style runner. And this is what this guy is. He runs upright. You think that he's going to take a bunch of hits, but as guys approach him, it's all these things. It's the balance, it's the power. I mean, how many times did you watch him do the hand slap thing? I mean, it looked like Emmitt. It looked like him, like Emmitt drifting away and then knocking hands away. So I'm not saying he is Emmitt Smith, but it's a trait that you don't see kind of taught or learned anymore. And I thought he was really good at that.
So I got a couple. I went today and compiled all of the comps for Zach Charbonnet that I could from well-respected media members and sites. I've got A.J. Dillon, DeMarco Murray, Elijah Mitchell, Najee Harris, Chris Ivory, Michael Turner, James Conner, Joe Mixon. You added in Emmitt Smith. I see. Now he's not this receiver. I'm just saying this right now. But I see a similar running style to like Le'Veon Bell when he was in Pittsburgh, just kind of that upright, patient, gonna bounce between gaps. He's a really unique player. And if you get a chance to watch the Colorado game, that game is just a lot of just big runs galore in that game.
I think I tweeted to you. It's fun. That was a very funny circumstance event. I had put my phone away. I was watching tape. I had the Colorado game came on. I think I watched about 4 carries of his, and then I went straight into the DMs on Twitter, and I started talking to a couple people. That Marcus was in this group, and I was like, have you guys seen this Colorado tape yet? Like, he is going nuts. I think he had 9 carries for 100+ yards. And then Marcus said, check your DMs. And Marcus had already DM'd me early in the evening about the Colorado game. So, yeah, we're definitely on the same page there. I mean, just to kind of quickly finish up, he has phone booth quicks, short area explosion to his game. Here's an element that I think doesn't get talked about enough. He has incredibly strong hands. He's a confident catcher and ball carrier. He only has 5 drops on 90 career targets and only 2 fumbles in 500+ carries at UCLA and Michigan. Uses his offhand as a weapon against tacklers reaching arm. We talked about that. Plug and play NFL starter skill set. It has the experience and balance in his game to be plugged in from day one and handle the variety of assignments required from an NFL back. And I'm talking strictly in the skill area. Like, he knows how to pass protect. He knows how to run the plays correctly. He knows how to receive the football. He just has a kind of skill set where he's done it all. So he knows at least how to do all that. He's got plus balance. Will spin and twist to get free. Patience behind the line of scrimmage, waiting for the hole to develop. Where does he win? Balanced, skilled running back with plus tackling, plus tackle breaking skills. And the unanswered question I have here is, he's had, I think, 550+ touches already on his body. How much tread is worn already? Is this guy a one contract running back?
I mean, aren't all running backs?
I was going to say that, right?
I mean, they're all so this is somebody that you draft. I would assume for Dallas probably in round 2, because I just don't see him getting to you in round 3. And he's the thunder to a Tony Pollard's lightning or whoever down the road. But I really like him. I like him a lot, and I could see how in Dallas where you don't want Tony Pollard to get all the between the tackle stuff. You want to save him on short yardage. You want to save him in the goal line. I think Charbonnet can walk right in and get 220 carries without being too unrealistic.
Look, we're a Cowboys podcast, so we're going to talk about how he relates to the Cowboys, and I think all those things are true. I think he's more than that too. I think if your team needed a sole producer as a running back for at least a couple years, I think if you had a good offensive line, this is a guy you could plug in as your starting running back, and you could do worse. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked to see this guy lead the NFL in rushing at some point, not because he's the most talented, but because he's a guy who I feel like you can give a bunch of carries because he can stay on the field a lot, and he does have plus tackle breaking ability. Like he does have some wiggle to his game, some breakaway ability. So I think that what you just prescribed for him for the Cowboys makes a ton of sense. But I also think if needed, he could be the guy for a team that is not necessarily rotating guys.
I wouldn't be surprised if he had a Josh Jacobs-like career who led the NFL in rushing this year. Without Jacobs had 4.66 speed. He is so much faster than that, but similar running style, similar, ability where you can leave him in all 3 downs and he's just going to be productive. What I like about him so much is at Michigan as a freshman scored 11 touchdowns. 2021 at UCLA scored 13 touchdowns. 2022 scored 14 touchdowns. Like, all he does is produce wherever he goes. And I got a feeling in the NFL, he's going to be a big time producer. So we like him a lot for the Dallas Cowboys. Let's talk about one more option, maybe a little bit later in the draft next. All right, Landon, wrapping up our running backs here. Let's talk about Kendre Miller from TCU, somebody that we talked about on our last podcast, but I think most people are viewing him as a, late day 2, early day 3 pick. How do you see him fitting into the NFL?
Yeah, it's funny when you mentioned a guy who could be, when you were doing the intro for Charbonnet, I thought it was for talking about Kendrick Miller, because I really think that he is kind of the guy that you look at and say, okay, if the Cowboys get out of the first 2 rounds without taking a running back and they're still looking for that guy to perfectly pair with Pollard, I think that Miller is like maybe the best option because I think their skill sets fit each other. Now he doesn't have the balance that we just talked about with Charbonnet, and balance in his game. I mean, and that's why he's going to be a little bit later guy. But I still like him a lot. He's 5'11", 215, so he's a little bit kind of more compact guy.
By the way, that's the style that I like, though. Like that's actually to me in the NFL the perfect body type right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that Charbonnet is right there to me. He's 6'2", 14. So that kind of 5'11" to 6'1", like 212 to 218. I think that's the body style to have, and you still see a couple different variations of that body style, even within that very kind of limited height and weight. But good marriage of his feet and his eyes. I really like the way he sees holes developing. He adjusts his foot pattern to allow to burst through the hole when it opens up. He's patient. And I think that's all very important. I did want to point out, we didn't get really any testing numbers for him. I think he's still recovering from an injury, if I'm not mistaken. So we don't have any kind of explosion or testing numbers for him at this point. He's got great balance. He will bounce and spin and keep his feet alive. And Charbonnet and him are kind of similar in this, where you see them taking multiple tacklers on and then kind of still managing to try to fight through, twisting and try to get around. He has impressive peripheral vision, tracks all the pieces on the chessboard well, and where they're moving. He sees the cut back lanes early. You see him make cuts that he shouldn't be able to see, and that shows real good peripheral visions, vision where he's not necessarily looking at the guy that he's setting up, and then suddenly you see him and he's cutting through the backside shoulder, the inside shoulder of him. Another guy who works through trash around his feet well, doesn't get tripped up by obstacles. I would love to see him burst through the hole a little bit. I talked about his patience behind the line of scrimmage, but there's times when he's almost too patient. He doesn't have that kind of same explosion that Gibbs and Charbonnet have. So he can get stuck behind the line of scrimmage waiting for a hole to develop and then not be able to get through the hole in time. He has reliable hands. He can catch the ball away from his frame. He's used on a lot of screens and wheels, but I would say he still has a ways to go to develop as a receiver. He's not necessarily super developed here. I mean, it's not that I wouldn't have a problem throwing him the ball or anything, but it's just not a part of this game that got leveraged a ton at TCU as far as I'm concerned, especially in the modern day, kind of NFL game. Uses start-stop quickness. That's one thing he does really well. He does start-stop really well to destroy tacklers' momentum. He can destroy angles that way. Willing run blocker when asked on running on wide receiver reverses. He's got some dog in him, as they say, and I think he will be a good special teamer if they ask him to do that. Again, another upright running guy, which was interesting. But he will lower his shoulder to power through creases, so he's not kind of stuck in that way. Good at the second level at earning extra yards. He's hard to tackle in the open. Where does he win? I put he's a balanced, well-rounded runner. He doesn't have very much dynamism to his game. I think the difference between him and Charbonnet is Charbonnet has a lot more explosion to his game, and I think some more creativity than Miller does. But I think Miller just does a great job of taking what's given. He can handle all the assignments. He can handle the short yardage stuff if you want him to. The unanswered question I have for him is in the pass game. I think, again, why I think that he's a good kind of mix with Pollard is I think Pollard has a lot more experience in the pass game than this guy does, not just as a receiver. But my big question was I didn't see a ton of pass protection reps from him. So I don't really know where he is as a pass protector and how will he develop in this area. That's kind of an unknown. So I think you pair this guy. I think this is a guy that we just mentioned is very much a pair in the NFL running back with someone like Pollard, who can kind of handle more of the kind of explosive run, pass game stuff, and let this guy be the guy that you kind of throw to the wolves on first down or whatever, whenever you need short yardage stuff, goal line stuff. That's where this guy will thrive.
To me, he reminds me a little bit. It's not a perfect comp. Is the Jamal Williams, who the Lions had last year? Scored a bunch of touchdowns, but just like good inside runner, not overly dynamic as an athlete, but you do want to pair him with somebody that has a little bit more juice and a little bit more playmaking ability, and that's obviously Tony Pollard. So if the Cowboys don't want to spend one of their top probably 3 picks, I think Kendre Miller, like in the 4th, 5th round, I think he can give you some, I think at the very worst, replaceable running back play and maybe a little bit more. So I think he's a good value on day 3.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think all 3 of these guys are guys that I would be happy with the Cowboys taking for different reasons, right? I mean, I think Gibbs is. I think the Gibbs pick would be interesting. I mean, just because I think that pairing with Pollard would be.
Well, I mean, it would only be for a year. Let's just be honest, right?
No, for sure.
If you draft Gibbs or you trade up to go get Gibbs,
he's your new Pollard.
He's your new Pollard, and you're just going to have a year where they overlap. Which, hey,
so
sign me up.
If that's the case, then you likely are going to inject a 3rd running back into that mix a little bit,
which might just be Malik Davis, right? Like maybe Malik Davis is getting the goal line touches now.
Yep. And then with Kendre Miller, I think it's a very straightforward insertion into the lineup. He comes in, he becomes the other guy. He may end up getting more touches than Pollard does, but that doesn't mean that he's more the featured back than Pollard would be, because I think it's a long season. So the key moments, the times you need a big play, that's when Pollard's going to be on the field. And then Charbonnet, I think, can do all of that. If you want him to be the change-up guy, if you want him to be the full-time guy, he can do all that as well. So I think that's kind of where you slot these guys as far as role in this team.
All right, I'm going to give you a draft pick in the name, and you tell me of these 3, which one would you rather have? So Jahmyr Gibbs at pick 40, Zach Charbonnet at pick 58, which is the Cowboys' 2nd-round pick, or Kendre Miller, top of the 4th round.
That's really tough. I think I would probably say, that's a really good question, Marcus. Really, the valuation there is perfect.
It's because it's basically, do you want to give up a 2nd and a 3rd to go get Gibbs? Do you want to just hang at 58 and draft Charbonnet, which I very much would like, or do you want to just wait until the 4th round and take Miller?
Those are, I mean, the thing is, and I don't want to cop out here, those are all really great options. If any of those 3 options were available, I think you would be thrilled.
I agree.
I will say, I think that if you take Charbonnet at 58, that you get what you need for this year, you get what you need for the future. And then I think you can go find whether you want to bring back Pollard and maybe see if you can convince him to sign a short-term deal, and then just kind of give Charbonnet some of the lion's share of the carries, and then kind of just sub Zeke for Charbonnet, maybe give Pollard a little bit higher percentage of the overall pie. I think that would be a good situation, and you also you keep your 1st-round pick, and you still manage to kind of, I guess in the Gibbs scenario, you're talking about trading up in the 2nd, but
trading up.
But so I guess you keep your 3rd-round pick if you want to go that route. And you get a situation where the running back room is stable next year as well. I mean, you're not done there, but at least you've got a stable force that can take the vast majority of the carries for you.
Yeah, I would be very happy if the pick was Charbonnet at 58, just because he's a really good player, but I want game breakers. If I can get Gibbs without having to use a 1st-round pick, sign me up. So lot of interesting running backs in this class. I've got a feeling Dallas is going to draft one relatively high this year. Would not be shocked at all if it's one of these 3 players. That is it for today's show. Thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Now make your second listen to Locked On NFL Scouting Show with the Draft Dudes. From free agency to the draft, salary cap management, and more. Join NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they take you what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise every Monday through Friday. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go check us out on YouTube. We post shows every single day over there. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.